16-year-old David walked through the automatic doors of Tech World Electronics with a specific mission. His little sister's birthday was coming up in 3 days, and he knew exactly what she wanted. She had been talking about getting a tablet for months, showing him pictures from catalogs and pointing at displays whenever they passed electronics stores. David had been saving money from his part-time job at the local grocery store for weeks. Every Friday after school, he worked 4 hours stocking shelves and helping customers. Every Saturday, he put in a full 8-hour shift. The money wasn't much, but he was proud of earning it himself. Today, he had $250 in cash in his wallet, enough to buy the tablet his sister dreamed about. He wore his school uniform, a navy blue blazer with the Lincoln High School crest, khaki pants, and polished black shoes. His backpack was slung over one shoulder, containing his homework and a water bottle. David looked like any other student who had stopped by the store after school. The moment he stepped inside, David felt eyes on him. He glanced around and noticed a security guard standing near the entrance, watching him closely. The guard was a tall, heavy-set man in his 50s with graying hair and a stern expression. His name tag read Dale Morrison, Security. David shrugged it off and headed toward the tablet section. He had done his research online and knew exactly which model offered the best value for his budget. The store was busy with after-school shoppers, families browsing for electronics, and employees helping customers. As David walked down the main aisle, he noticed Morrison following him at a distance. Every time David stopped to look at something, Morrison stopped too, pretending to check his phone or adjust his uniform. When David turned left toward the tablets, Morrison turned left. When David paused to read a price tag, Morrison found a reason to be nearby. David tried to ignore it. He had experienced this kind of treatment before in stores, but he had learned to focus on his purpose and not let it bother him. He was here to buy a gift for his sister, and that's exactly what he was going to do. The tablet section displayed dozens of different models from various brands. David pulled out his phone to check his notes about screen sizes, storage capacity, and features. He had spent hours researching to make sure he got the best tablet for his sister's needs. She loved drawing and wanted to use digital art apps, so he needed something with a good display and responsive touchscreen. Behind him, Morrison spoke quietly into his radio. "Yeah, I've got a situation developing in electronics. Young male appears to be casing the tablet section. Keep an eye on the exits." David found the tablet he was looking for, a sleek device with excellent reviews and a price tag of $239. Perfect. He carefully lifted the display model to test its weight and screen responsiveness. It felt solid and well-made. His sister was going to love it. Morrison moved closer, now just 1 aisle away. He pretended to organize some phone cases while keeping David in his direct line of sight. Other customers browsed nearby, completely unaware of the tension building in the electronics section. David decided he was ready to make his purchase. He looked around for an employee to help him get the tablet from the locked display case. A young saleswoman with a friendly smile approached him. "Can I help you find something?" she asked. "Yes, I'd like to buy this tablet," David said, pointing to the model he had been examining. "It's for my sister's birthday." The saleswoman smiled. "That's a great choice. It's one of our most popular models. Let me get that for you." She unlocked the display case and retrieved a boxed tablet from the inventory behind the counter. David followed her toward the checkout area, feeling good about his purchase. His sister was going to be so surprised and happy. That's when Morrison stepped directly into his path. "Excuse me," Morrison said loudly, causing several nearby customers to look over. "I need to see your receipt for that item." David looked confused. "I haven't paid for it yet. I'm heading to checkout right now." "Don't play games with me, kid," Morrison said, his voice getting louder. "I saw you stuffing something in your backpack back there. Empty it out now." The saleswoman looked shocked. "Sir, this customer was just asking me to help him purchase this tablet. He hasn't done anything wrong." Morrison ignored her and focused on David. "I've been watching you since you walked in here. I know exactly what you're up to. You've been casing this place looking for what you can grab." Other customers stopped their shopping to watch the scene unfold. Some pulled out their phones, sensing that something significant was happening. David felt his face getting hot with embarrassment and anger, but he tried to stay calm. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding," David said respectfully. "I came here to buy this tablet for my sister's birthday. I have the money right here." He started to reach for his wallet. "Don't reach for anything. Morrison shouted. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The store fell silent. Even customers in other sections had stopped to see what was causing the commotion. David raised his hands slightly, his heart racing. He had never been treated like this before, and he didn't understand why this was happening. "Please," David said quietly. "I just want to buy this tablet and go home. I have the money. I work at Murphy's Grocery to save up for this." Morrison stepped closer, invading David's personal space. "Yeah, right. Kids like you don't have jobs. Kids like you don't buy expensive electronics with honest money. I've been doing security for 20 years and I know trouble when I see it." The saleswoman tried to intervene again. "Sir, I really think there's been a mistake." This young man was being very polite and just asked for help buying the tablet. Morrison turned on her angrily. "Ma'am, I'm trained to spot shoplifters and suspicious behavior. This kid has been acting suspicious since the moment he walked in. Now step back and let me handle this." David felt trapped and humiliated. Dozens of people were now watching him being accused of something he hadn't done. His school blazer, his polite demeanor, his hard-earned money. None of it seemed to matter to this security guard who had already made up his mind about who David was and what he was doing there. The situation was spinning out of control, and David realized that no amount of explaining was going to change Morrison's mind. He needed help, but he wasn't sure where to turn or what to do next. Morrison wasn't backing down. If anything, the crowd gathering around them seemed to make him more determined to prove his point. He keyed his radio again, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "I need backup in the electronics section. Suspected shoplifter refusing to cooperate." David couldn't believe what was happening. "Sir, I haven't refused anything. I told you I'm here to buy this tablet. I have money. I can show you my wallet if you want." "Nice try," Morrison said with a sneer. "That's the oldest trick in the book. Show me some cash to throw me off while the real stolen goods are hidden somewhere else. I wasn't born yesterday, kid." A woman with 2 small children moved away from the scene, pulling her kids closer to her. An elderly man shook his head in disapproval, though David couldn't tell if the man disapproved of him or the security guard's behavior. "Empty your backpack," Morrison demanded. "Right here, right now. Everything out on the counter." David looked around desperately. The saleswoman who had been helping him looked uncomfortable, but didn't seem to know how to intervene. Other store employees had gathered nearby, whispering among themselves. "I don't think I have to do that," David said quietly. "I haven't stolen anything. I haven't even been to the bathroom or anywhere private where I could hide something." Morrison's face turned red with anger. "Are you refusing to comply with store security? Because that tells me everything I need to know about your intentions here." A teenage girl near the gaming section had her phone out, clearly recording the encounter. Her friend tugged at her arm, trying to get her to stop, but she kept filming. Several other people had their phones ready too. "Look," David said, trying one more time to reason with Morrison. "I understand you're doing your job, but I really haven't done anything wrong. Can we please get a manager involved here? Maybe they can help sort this out." Morrison laughed coldly. "Oh, you want to talk to a manager now? What's your plan there? Charm them with your innocent act? I've seen it all before, trust me." The crowd was getting larger. People from other parts of the store had noticed the commotion and drifted over to see what was happening. David felt like he was on display in the worst possible way. A middle-aged man in a business suit stepped forward. "Excuse me, but I've been watching this whole thing. The kid was just asking for help buying something. This seems pretty excessive." Morrison whirled around to face the man. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but store security is my responsibility. This individual has been exhibiting suspicious behavior since entering the premises." "What suspicious behavior?" the man asked. "Walking around the store? Looking at merchandise? That's what customers do." He was casing the place, and Morrison insisted, checking out exit routes, seeing where cameras are positioned, figuring out what he could grab and run with. David felt sick to his stomach. "That's not what I was doing at all. I was looking for the tablet section because I knew what I wanted to buy." A woman wearing scrubs, probably a nurse getting off work, spoke up. "Why don't you just let him pay for the tour? Able it and leave? If he has the money and wants to buy it, what's the problem?" Morrison was getting more agitated by the minute. "The problem is that I know what I saw. I've been doing this job for 2 decades. I can spot a thief from across the store." "But he hasn't stolen anything," the nurse pointed out. "He hasn't even tried to leave the store." "He's planning to," Morrison said confidently. I'm stopping a crime before it happens. That's what good security work looks like. David's hands were shaking now. He had never been in a situation like this before. He thought about his parents, wondering what they would tell him to do. He thought about his sister, waiting at home for him to return from his shopping trip. "Please," David said, his voice cracking slightly. "Can someone just call a manager? I really think there's been a huge misunderstanding here." Morrison stepped even closer to David. "Empty the backpack, now. Or I'm calling the police and having you arrested for shoplifting and failure to comply with store security." The threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. David realized that Morrison was serious about calling the police. The thought terrified him. He had never been in trouble with the law. He was an honor student who worked part-time and saved money to buy his sister birthday presents. "I'll empty my backpack," David said finally. "But there's nothing in there except school stuff." He slowly unzipped his backpack and began pulling items out onto the nearby counter. First came his history textbook, then his math notebook. He pulled out 3 pens, a highlighter, and his water bottle. Finally, he removed a brown paper bag containing the sandwich he hadn't finished at lunch. Morrison examined each item suspiciously, as if the textbook might somehow contain stolen electronics. He opened the notebook and flipped through pages of math problems and history notes. He even opened the water bottle and sniffed it. "Satisfied?" David asked. Morrison ignored the question and continued his inspection. "Empty your pockets too." David sighed and began pulling items from his pockets. His wallet, his house keys, his phone, and some loose change. Morrison picked up the wallet and started to open it. "Hey," David protested. "You can't go through my wallet. That's private." "I can and I will," Morrison said. "Store security policy gives me the right to search suspected shoplifters." He opened the wallet and found exactly what David had said he would find. $250 in cash, plus David's student ID, library card, and a photo of his family. Morrison studied the student ID carefully as if looking for signs that it was fake. The photo clearly showed David's face and the ID was obviously legitimate. One of the bystanders spoke up. "He's got the money right there. He's got a student ID. What more do you need?" Morrison wasn't giving up. IDs can be stolen. Money can come from anywhere. I've seen kids fence stolen goods and then use that money to buy other stuff as a cover. The accusations were getting more and more ridiculous, and David could see that even some of the other customers were starting to look uncomfortable with Morrison's behavior. A store employee approached hesitantly. "Mr. Morrison, maybe we should call Mrs. Patterson down here to handle this." Morrison shot the employee a withering look. "I don't need the manager to do my job for me. I've got this situation under control." But it was clear that he didn't have anything under control. The crowd was getting restless, people were recording, and David hadn't done anything wrong. Morrison had created a scene based on nothing more than his own suspicions. David felt humiliated and angry, but he also felt something else. A growing determination not to let this man destroy his dignity. He straightened his shoulders and looked Morrison directly in the eye. "You've searched my backpack and my wallet," David said clearly. "You found exactly what I told you you'd find. School supplies and the money I saved to buy my sister a birthday present. I haven't stolen anything. I haven't tried to leave the store, and I haven't done anything wrong. Now, are you going to let me buy this tablet, or are you going to continue this harassment?" The word harassment seemed to hit Morrison like a slap. His face flushed even redder, and David could see that the security guard realized he had pushed things too far, but was too proud to back down now. Morrison's face twisted. With rage at David's use of the word harassment, the security guard had clearly reached his breaking point. "Harassment?" Morrison repeated loudly. "You want to see harassment? I'm calling the police right now. We'll see how tough you are when real cops get here." He pulled out his phone and began dialing. The crowd around them grew quiet, sensing that the situation had just escalated to a whole new level. David felt his heart sink. This was exactly what he had been afraid of. "Wait," called out a voice from the back of the crowd. A woman in a business suit pushed through the gathered customers. "I'm Linda Patterson, the store manager. What's going on here?" Morrison looked relieved to see his boss. "Mrs. Patterson, I caught this kid shoplifting. He's been acting suspicious since he walked in, and when I tried to search him, he became uncooperative and started throwing around accusations." Mrs. Patterson looked at the scene. David standing with his backpack contents spread across the counter. Morrison holding his phone and dozens of customers watching everything unfold. "Has he actually taken anything?" she asked. "Not yet," Morrison admitted. "But I prevented a crime from happening." "That's proactive security work." Mrs. Patterson looked confused. "So he hasn't stolen anything? Hasn't tried to leave the store and was in the process of making a purchase?" "He was casing the place," Morrison insisted. "I know suspicious behavior when I see it." David found his voice. "Ma'am, I came here to buy a tablet for my sister's birthday. I have the money right here." He gestured to his wallet, still lying open on the counter. "Your employee was helping me get the tablet from the display case when he," David pointed at Morrison, "accused me of stealing." Mrs. Patterson picked up David's student ID and examined it. "David Chen, Lincoln High School. Are you here with a parent?" "No, ma'am," David replied. "I'm 16. I have a job at Murphy's Grocery and I saved up money to buy this tablet myself." One of the customers who had been watching spoke up. "I saw the whole thing. The kid was just shopping normally. He asked for help, and then this security guard went crazy." Another person nodded in agreement. "The boy has been nothing but polite this entire time." Mrs. Patterson turned to Morrison. "Dale, did you call the police?" "I was about to," Morrison said, still holding his phone. "This situation needs official intervention." "Put the phone away," Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "I need to review our security footage before we involve law enforcement." Morrison looked like he wanted to argue, but reluctantly put his phone back in his pocket. He wasn't giving up, though. "Mrs. Patterson, with all due respect, I've been doing security here for 3 years. I know what I saw. This kid was behaving suspiciously from the moment he walked in. David was getting tired of being talked about like he wasn't standing right there." "Can I call my father?" he asked. "I think he should know what's happening here." Morrison scoffed. "Sure, call Daddy. Maybe he can come bail you out." Mrs. Patterson shot Morrison a sharp look. "Of course you can call your father," she told David. "That's completely reasonable." David pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He scrolled to his father's contact and hit the call button. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "David, is everything okay? You're supposed to be at the electronics store." "Dad, I'm at Tech World and there's a problem," David said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The security guard here is accusing me of shoplifting and now the manager is involved. I haven't done anything wrong, but they're talking about calling the police." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When his father spoke again, his voice was calm, but had a different quality to it. More formal, more authoritative. "Tell me exactly what happened, son. Don't leave anything out." David explained the entire situation while Morrison stood nearby with his arms crossed, clearly annoyed by the delay. David described how he had been followed around the store, how Morrison had accused him of stealing before he even tried to buy anything, and how the security guard had searched his belongings in front of everyone. "Is the security guard there now?" his father asked. "Yes, sir." "Put him on the phone." David held out his phone toward Morrison. "My father wants to speak with you." Morrison rolled his eyes. "I don't have time for this." But Mrs. Patterson gestured for him to take the phone. "Hello?" Morrison said in an annoyed tone. "This is Dale Morrison, head of security at Tech World Electronics." The crowd was completely silent now, straining to hear Morrison's side of the conversation. They could only hear his responses, but his attitude began to change almost immediately. "Yes, I understand, but—" Morrison started, then stopped. His expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. "I was following standard security protocols," Morrison said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "The individual was exhibiting suspicious behavior patterns that I've been trained to recognize." Another pause, during which Morrison's face grew pale. "No, sir, he hasn't actually taken anything," Morrison admitted, "but prevention is a key component of effective security work." Morrison was quiet for a long time, listening to whatever David's father was saying. The security guard's posture changed completely. He stood straighter, and when he spoke again, his tone was much more respectful. "Yes, sir, I understand your concern, but I was acting within my authority as store security." The longest pause yet followed. Morrison's eyes darted around nervously, and several people in the crowd exchanged glances. Something was definitely happening on the other end of that phone call. Yes, sir," Morrison said finally. "I understand. Here's Mrs. Patterson." He handed the phone to the store manager with a look of confusion and growing concern on his face. "This is Linda Patterson. the manager said into the phone. "I'm very sorry about this situation." Mrs. Patterson listened for a moment, then her expression changed dramatically. Her eyes widened and she stood up straighter. "Oh my goodness," she said. "Yes, sir, absolutely. I had no idea. This is completely unacceptable." She listened for another minute, occasionally saying, "Yes, sir, and I understand completely." "He'll be here in 15 minutes?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Yes, sir, we'll wait right here. Again, I am so very sorry about this." She handed the phone back to David, who was watching everything with growing curiosity. What had his father said that made both Morrison and Mrs. Patterson react so strongly? "David," his father said when he took the phone back, "I'm coming to the store right now. Don't worry about anything. Just stay calm and wait for me." "Dad, what did you tell them?" "I told them the truth about who I am," his father replied. "You've done nothing wrong, son. This situation is going to be resolved very quickly." David hung up the phone, more confused than ever. Morrison was staring at him with a completely different expression now. Not angry or suspicious, but worried. Mrs. Patterson was speaking quietly with other store employees, and she kept looking over at David with what appeared to be concern. "Who exactly is your father?" Mrs. Patterson asked David gently. Before David could answer, Morrison stepped forward. His aggressive demeanor had completely disappeared, replaced by nervous energy. "What's your last name again?" Morrison asked, his voice much quieter than before. "Chen," David replied, still confused by everyone's sudden change in behavior. Morrison's face went completely white. He looked like someone had just told him his worst nightmare was about to come true. The crowd was still watching, but now they were watching Morrison instead of David. The security guard kept checking his watch and looking toward the store entrance. Whatever David's father had told him during that phone call had clearly shaken him to his core. David stood there wondering what was going to happen when his father arrived, and why everyone was suddenly treating him so differently. In 15 minutes, he was about to find out exactly why that phone call had changed everything. The 15 minutes felt like hours. Morrison kept checking his watch every 30 seconds, and Mrs. Patterson had moved the entire situation to a more private area near the customer service desk. Most of the crowd had dispersed, but several people lingered nearby, sensing that something significant was about to happen. David sat in a chair that Mrs. Patterson had brought for him, still holding the tablet he had originally come to buy. The store manager had insisted that they complete his purchase immediately, refusing to accept his money and telling him the tablet was on the house, due to the inconvenience he had experienced. Morrison paced back and forth near the entrance, his earlier confidence completely gone. He had tried to call his wife twice, hanging up both times before she answered. Every time the automatic doors opened, he jumped slightly, looking to see who was coming in. "David," Mrs. Patterson said gently, "I want you to know that what happened here today is completely against our store policies. We pride ourselves on treating all customers with respect, and Mr. Morrison's behavior was completely inappropriate." David nodded, but remained quiet. He was still processing everything that had happened and trying to figure out why everyone's attitude had changed so dramatically after that phone call. A young employee approached Mrs. Patterson and whispered something in her ear. She nodded and looked toward the entrance. "He's here," she said simply. Morrison stopped pacing and turned toward the doors. His face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. David looked toward the entrance, wondering what he was about to see. The automatic doors slid open and David's father walked in. To David, he looked exactly the same as always. Tall, calm, and wearing the same clothes he had been wearing when David left for school that morning. But the reaction from everyone else in the store was immediate and dramatic. Captain Robert Chen wore his full police uniform, complete with badges, insignia, and equipment belt. His presence commanded attention from everyone in the vicinity. The few remaining customers stopped what they were doing and stared. Store employees whispered to each other and pointed discreetly. Morrison looked like he might faint. Captain Chen walked directly to where David was sitting, his expression serious but controlled. He placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine, Dad," David replied. "Just confused about why everyone's acting so weird all of a sudden." Captain Chen turned to face Mrs. Patterson, who approached with obvious nervousness. "Captain Chen," she said formally, "I cannot express how sorry I am about this incident. I've already spoken with our district manager, and we're implementing immediate changes to our security training protocols. Captain Chen nodded politely. I appreciate that, Mrs. Patterson. I'd like to review what happened here today. Morrison slowly approached the group, looking like a man walking to his execution. Captain Chen turned to face him, and the security guard actually took a step backward. You must be Mr. Morrison, Captain Chen said in a calm, professional tone. I believe you had some concerns about my son's behavior in your store today. Morrison opened his mouth, but no words came out. He cleared his throat and tried again. Captain Chen, sir, I was just doing my job. I saw what I thought was suspicious behavior, and I acted according to my training. I see, Captain Chen replied. And what specific behaviors did you observe that you found suspicious? Morrison looked around desperately as if hoping someone would help him answer the question. Well, he was. He was walking around the store looking at things, Morrison said weakly. Looking at merchandise in a retail store, Captain Chen repeated. That does sound suspicious. Several of the remaining customers couldn't help but chuckle at the obvious sarcasm in Captain Chen's voice. Morrison tried to recover. He was checking out exit routes and camera positions. Classic shoplifter behavior. Captain Chen pulled out a small notebook. Mr. Morrison, I'd like you to show me exactly where in the store my son was when you observed him checking exit routes and camera positions. Morrison looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, I'd like you to walk me through the store and point out the specific locations where you witnessed this behavior. Captain Chen explained patiently. For my report. The word report made Morrison's face go even paler. Your report? Morrison asked nervously. Yes, Captain Chen replied. When a citizen files a complaint about harassment and racial profiling, we take it very seriously, especially when it involves a minor. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward. Captain Chen, I want you to know that Mr. Morrison no longer works for this store. His employment was terminated as soon as I understood what had happened here. Morrison's head snapped toward his boss. What, you can't fire me? I was doing my job. Your job is to prevent shoplifting and ensure customer safety, Mrs. Patterson replied firmly. Your job is not to harass teenagers who are shopping with their own money. Captain Chen held up a hand. Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate the action you've taken. But this isn't just a personnel matter anymore. Mr. Morrison accused my son of criminal activity without cause, searched his personal belongings, and created a public spectacle. These actions need to be documented properly. Morrison was starting to panic. Captain Chen, please, I made a mistake. I realize that now. But I wasn't trying to profile anyone. I treat all suspicious customers the same way. Suspicious customers, Captain Chen repeated. What made my son suspicious to you, Mr. Morrison? He's wearing his school uniform, he had money to make a purchase, and he was accompanied by proper identification. What exactly triggered your suspicion? Morrison looked around the room desperately. He knew that any answer he gave was going to make things worse for him. I have experience spotting shoplifters, he said lamely. It was just a feeling. A feeling, Captain Chen said, writing something in his notebook. Based on what specific observable behaviors? The questions were precise and professional, but Morrison was clearly falling apart under the pressure. David watched his father work and began to understand why Morrison had been so nervous after that phone call. Mr. Morrison, Captain Chen continued, how many other customers did you follow around the store today? I don't know. I mean, I keep an eye on everyone. But how many did you actually follow step by step, aisle by aisle for an extended period? Morrison was quiet. How many other customers did you demand a search today? More silence. How many other customers did you accuse of stealing before they had even attempted to make a purchase? Morrison's shoulders slumped. He knew he had no good answers to these questions. David spoke up for the first time since his father had arrived. Dad, I just want to buy the tablet and go home. I don't want to make a big deal out of this. Captain Chen smiled at his son. David, I'm proud of how you handled yourself today. But this isn't about making a big deal out of things. This is about making sure this doesn't happen to the next kid who comes in here to buy something with money they earned themselves. He turned back to Morrison. Mr. Morrison, my son is an honor student who works part-time to earn spending money. He came here to buy a birthday present for his little sister. The only thing he did wrong today was being in your store while being a young black man, and that's not wrong at all. Morrison looked like he wanted to disappear completely. The few customers still watching nodded in agreement with Captain Chen's words. Mrs. Patterson approached Captain Chen again. Captain, what can we do to make this right? We want to ensure that David and your family know how seriously we take this incident. Captain Chen looked at David, then back at the store manager. Mrs. Patterson, I think the most important thing is making sure your staff receives proper training, so that no other family has to go through what we've experienced today. As for Mr. Morrison, this incident will be documented and forwarded to the appropriate authorities for review. Morrison realized that his problems were just beginning. Losing his job was bad enough, but now he was facing potential legal consequences for his actions. David stood up, holding his tablet. Can we go home now, Dad? Captain Chen nodded. We can go home, son. You did everything right today. As they walked toward the exit, David could hear Mrs. Patterson speaking firmly to her remaining staff about new policies and training requirements. Morrison sat alone at the customer service desk, staring at his hands and contemplating how one bad decision had changed his life forever. The automatic doors closed behind them as father and son left the store together, with David finally understanding why that phone call had changed everything. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at Tech World Electronics, and the ripple effects were still spreading throughout the community. David sat at the kitchen table, finishing his homework while his little sister Angela played with her new tablet nearby. She had been thrilled with her birthday present, completely unaware of the drama that had surrounded its purchase. Captain Chen walked into the kitchen, still in his uniform after finishing his shift. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from David. How was school today? He asked. Good, David replied, closing his math textbook. Mr. Williams asked if I'd be willing to speak at the student assembly next week about standing up for yourself when you're treated unfairly. Captain Chen smiled. That's a great opportunity. Are you interested? David nodded. I think so. At first I just wanted to forget about what happened, but now I think maybe sharing the story could help other kids. The incident at Tech World had become bigger than anyone expected. Someone in the crowd had recorded parts of the confrontation, and the video had gone viral on social media. Local news stations had picked up the story, focusing on racial profiling in retail settings and the importance of proper security training. Captain Chen had handled the aftermath with typical professionalism. He had filed an official report about the incident, not as David's father, but as a police officer documenting a case of potential discrimination. The report had been forwarded to the district attorney's office for review. Morrison had faced swift consequences. Not only had he lost his job at Tech World, but his behavior had been so clearly inappropriate that he was having trouble finding work elsewhere in security. Word traveled fast in the industry, and no other retailers wanted to hire someone who had created such a public relations nightmare. More importantly, the incident had sparked a broader conversation about retail security practices throughout the city. Captain Chen had been invited to speak at a conference for retail managers about recognizing and preventing racial profiling by security staff. Mrs. Patterson called me today, Captain Chen told David. She wanted to update us on the changes they've made at Tech World. David looked up with interest. What kind of changes? Every security employee in the company now has to complete 40 hours of training on customer relations and bias recognition, Captain Chen explained. They've also implemented a new policy requiring approval from a manager before any customer can be searched or detained. Angela looked up from her tablet. Daddy, what's bias recognition? Captain Chen thought for a moment about how to explain it to an 8-year-old. It means learning to notice when you're treating someone differently because of what they look like, instead of how they're actually behaving. Like when Tommy at school said I couldn't be good at math because I'm a girl, Angela asked. Exactly like that, Captain Chen replied. Sometimes people make assumptions about others that aren't fair or true. David smiled at his sister's quick understanding. That's why I want to talk to other students at the assembly, so they know what to do if someone treats them unfairly. The doorbell rang and Captain Chen went to answer it. He returned a few minutes later with Mrs. Patterson, who was carrying a large gift bag. Mrs. Patterson wanted to stop by and speak with you, Captain Chen told David. David stood up politely. Hello, Mrs. Patterson. Hello, David, she replied, looking somewhat nervous. I hope it's okay that I came by. I wanted to personally apologize again for what happened at our store, and to tell you about some positive changes that have come from this situation. She handed him the gift bag. This is a small token of our appreciation for your patience and maturity during such a difficult experience. David opened the bag and found A gift card to Tech World along with a letter of recommendation for college applications, praising his composure and character during the incident. "You don't need to give me anything," David said. "But thank you." Mrs. Patterson sat down at the kitchen table. "David, I want you to know that your experience has led to improvements that will benefit thousands of other customers. We've partnered with the local NACP chapter to review all of our policies. And we're working with other retailers in the area to share our new training materials." She turned to Captain Chen. "Captain, we've also established a community liaison position at each of our stores. The person in that role will be responsible for building relationships with local community leaders and ensuring that incidents like this never happen again." Captain Chen nodded approvingly. "That sounds like a comprehensive approach. I'm glad to see the company taking this seriously." "We are," Mrs. Patterson assured him. "This incident was a wake-up call for us. We realized that having good intentions isn't enough if our actions don't match those intentions." David had been quiet during the conversation, but now he spoke up. "Mrs. Patterson, what happened to the other customers who saw what happened? Some of them tried to help me." "That's actually one of the most encouraging parts of this whole situation," she replied. "Several of those customers have reached out to us to share their own experiences and suggestions for improvement. We're planning to form a customer advisory group to help us continue making positive changes." After Mrs. Patterson left, the Chen family sat down for dinner. Captain Chen had been thinking about the broader implications of the incident and wanted to discuss them with his children. "David, I'm proud of how you've handled this situation," he said. "But I want to make sure you understand that what happened to you wasn't your fault, and it wasn't because you did anything wrong." David nodded. "I know, Dad, but it still bothers me that Morrison assumed I was a criminal just because I'm black." "It should bother you," Captain Chen replied. "That kind of thinking is wrong and it's harmful. But the way you responded, staying calm, being respectful, asking for help when you needed it, that was exactly right." Angela looked between her father and brother. "Will this happen to me someday?" Captain Chen and David exchanged a look. It was a difficult question to answer honestly without frightening her. "It might," Captain Chen said gently. "But if it does, you'll know how to handle it because you have David's example to follow. And hopefully because of what David went through, it will happen less often to other kids." A month later, David stood at the podium in his school's auditorium, looking out at hundreds of students. He had spoken at several events since the Tech World incident, but this was the most important one to him because these were his peers. "A lot of you have probably seen the video or heard about what happened to me at the electronics store," he began. "I want to tell you what I learned from that experience and what you can do if something similar ever happens to you." He talked about staying calm under pressure, knowing your rights and asking for help when you need it. He explained the importance of treating others fairly and speaking up when you see discrimination happening. "The most important thing I learned," David concluded, "is that one person standing up for what's right can create changes that help everyone." Mrs. Patterson told me that the new training program at Tech World is being adopted by other retail chains across the country. That means what happened to me is helping protect other kids in other cities. After his speech, several students approached David with their own stories of unfair treatment and questions about how to respond. He realized that his experience, as difficult as it had been, was giving him the opportunity to help others in a meaningful way. That evening, Captain Chen found David in his room, working on a presentation for a community forum the following week. "You know," Captain Chen said, "when I became a police officer, I hoped I could make the community safer for families like ours. Watching you turn this negative experience into something positive makes me realize that you're already doing that work too." David looked up from his computer. "Dad, do you think things will really change? Or will this just be forgotten in a few months?" Captain Chen considered the question carefully. "Real change takes time and it takes constant effort. But I've seen the impact you've had already. Tech World isn't the same company it was 2 months ago. Other retailers are examining their own practices. Young people are learning to speak up for themselves and others." He sat down on David's bed. "The most important change, though, is in you. You've discovered that you have the power to make things better. Not just for yourself, but for other people too. That's a gift that will serve you well for the rest of your life." David saved his presentation and turned to face his father. "I never wanted any of this to happen, but I'm glad it led to something good. That's what real strength looks like, Captain Chen replied, taking something painful and using it to build something better. As David prepared for bed that night, he thought about Morrison, wondering if the former security guard had learned anything from the experience. He thought about Mrs. Patterson and the changes at Tech World. He thought about his sister, and whether she would grow up in a world where incidents like his happened less often. Mostly, though, he thought about the speech he would give the following week, and the young people in the audience who might need to hear that they have the power to stand up for themselves and create positive change in their communities. The tablet he had bought for Angela sat on her desk, a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary moments can become extraordinary opportunities to make the world a little bit better.